Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, folks, hello. Go ahead and say hello in the chat if you would like. Welcome to tonight's call. We're super excited to have you all. We're going to get started in just a moment. We had a ton of last minute signups, so we're going to give it a beat for folks to arrive. Really appreciate everyone's investment in our topic for tonight, which is election protection, the Hands Off Our Vote campaign at Indivisible. So excited to have everybody here. It looks like folks are already putting in the chat where they're calling in from, going far too fast for me to see all the locations and names, but just very, very grateful to see how many folks are turning out tonight, ready and excited to protect this election and demand hands off our vote. My name is Nora. I work at Indivisible on the National Trainings and Calls team. I'm going to be our MC and one of your trainers for tonight. I'm joined by a really amazing team of Indivisible staff, as well as a special guest from one of our partners. And yeah, just going to give it another beat here as we make sure that as many folks as possible can get here for the start of the call tonight. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're really, really grateful and thrilled to have so many folks joining us tonight to demonstrate that you're ready to demand hands off our vote. This is a really crucial time. We have so much work to do, and we're really excited to talk tonight about what we can accomplish together. So gonna give it another beat here. Looks like we're at around 4,200 people joining the call tonight. I think we'll have more rolling in. Yeah, let's just kind of give another moment here. Hello, everyone who's just joined in the past few minutes. Want to say welcome and thank you for being here for the kickoff call for Hands Off Our Vote, which is Indivisible's National Election Protection campaign this year. My name is Nora. I work at Indivisible on the National Calls and Trainings team, and I'm going to be your host and MC for the evening. And I think that our numbers are slowing down just a little bit, and other folks will kind of catch on along the way. So with around 4,500 folks in the call, let's go ahead and keep it moving here. So let's go to our first slide with just a little bit of housekeeping to get us started. Just want to name some options for you all tonight. So we do ask that you send questions to the Q&A. We're going to be tracking a lot of the Q&A, not just for things we might answer tonight, but to inform upcoming trainings. So later in the call, you're going to hear about two different trainings we have coming up. We'll be dropping links for those, and we really want to see what questions you have to help inform what that future content is going to look like. We'll also try to address some of the most common stuff in the Q&A section at the end of the call, as well as along the way. That said, many of you may have very specific questions about election protection that are outside the scope of tonight's call. So that's why we appreciate you putting them in the Q&A so we can save that and track for the future. I do also see that the chat is continuing to move at lightning speed. That is a great space for conversation, for response, for giving love to the speakers along the way, our special guests in particular. But just want to also say this, we want the chat to be a space where folks can respect each other. If there are any trolls, don't worry about it. We'll be watching out for offensive or harmful language, and our back-end team, shout out to them, will be taking care of that. But try to keep it constructive and focused on the topic at hand and on supporting each other. We do always like to point out that Indivisible calls like this are a public space. Anybody could sign up for that, so please just keep that in mind as you're thinking about what you put in the chat. And yes, as always, we will send out a follow-up email with all of the materials from tonight, including the recording. We know that's a common question. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide, just a little bit more housekeeping. For access and for clarity about pieces of the Zoom space, especially in webinar format, just want to let folks know if those reactions, the hearts, the smiley faces, if they're not your favorite, you can turn them off or reduce their size. So there's an image on the screen right now that shows you where to look for the react button to change that. You can turn on captions if you'd like them using the show captions CC button. The Q&A, we have an image of that. Most of these things are going to be available wherever your control bar is. And just so folks know, we are in webinar format tonight. So if you don't see a video or an audio symbol, that's normal. That's not just you. That's true for everybody who's here as an attendee tonight. And if you're wanting to send chat messages, you may be set to chat to just hosts and panelists. You can switch that to chat to everyone if you want everyone to be able to see your message. Welcome to folks who have maybe just joined us in the past minute or two. You're at the Hands Off Our Vote election protection kickoff call for Indivisible, and you're here just in time, just doing a little bit of light housekeeping. Let me let you all know what we're going to cover for the rest of tonight. I'm really excited that to start us off with the big picture, we're going to cover what we're up against and the movement that is fighting it in Indivisible and beyond. You'll hear from our fearless co-leader and co-executive director, Leah Greenberg, and we're also joined by Corey Dukes from Protect Democracy. Excited to have Corey with us as well. And then you'll hear from a couple different members of Indivisible's policy and political teams, as well as myself, for an overview of Indivisible's election protection strategy, what Hands Off Our Vote is all about, what we can already start doing right now, and a couple of POV situations and scenarios to kind of get you thinking about how you can really apply this wherever you are. Want to give a quick note, what we're not covering tonight are things about the very crucial candidates and primaries and electoral races that are maybe on many of your minds. So if you're expecting to hear about getting out the vote, phone banks, door knocks, things to sign up for right now for specific candidates or races or upcoming primaries, that's outside the scope of this call. That's very, very important work. Check out indivisible.org for everything you might need to know, but just want to set expectations for what we're covering. I think we can go to the next slide in that case. So I just want to start off with some quick clarity. What is Hands Off Our Vote? You might hear that phrase, or hands off XYZ state, this place, that place, hands off other things as well. But when we're talking about Hands Off Our Vote in the Indivisible space, it is our nationwide program to ensure that every eligible voter can vote, that every vote is counted, and that the results are honored and the winners seated. So what that's going to look like in practice, if we go to the next slide, over the course of this program, we're going to be working together to protect the vote in your area, across the country. We'll do that through shared resources and guidance for folks to use, through information about how to connect to local and national volunteer opportunities. We'll give you information about how to support rapid response moments of all kinds. We'll get you trained and ready for activations that we may enter into this fall. And I do want to say for folks who are in our battleground states, we'll give more details on that later. There's some specific things that may be true for folks depending on state. For the next slide, just kind of wanted to say loud and clear, you'll hear this message kind of repeated in different ways by other members of our team tonight. But we just want to say it to start off. The threats that we're facing this election cycle are very real, but we believe that we can defeat them together. And a really big part of that is that we all have a role to play. So if you take one thing away from this tonight, let it be that we all have a role to play. And now is the time to find what that role is for you and to find your lane. And so with that, I think I'm going to pull up my colleague and wonderful co-leader, Leah Greenberg, to walk us through the next pieces here. Leah, you with us?
I'm here. Hi, Nora. Hello, everybody. It is so great to be here with you tonight. I am so excited to see so many people turn out who care about protecting our democracy. I know we've got some new folks on the call tonight, so I will just start by saying welcome. If you're new to Indivisible, we are a network of thousands of local groups and millions of people who organize in every corner of this country. We believe that if we are going to protect our democracy, our families, and our neighbors, we can't leave it up to the politicians. We got to take the lead ourselves. From the biggest blue cities to the reddest rural counties, Indivisible leaders are building power, creating community, and leading the way. So if you are new to Indivisible or you just stumbled on this call, you're welcome and you are needed. Together, we are going to be ready to meet this moment. So tonight, we are here to talk about how we use people power to stop Donald Trump from sabotaging our elections, to ensure that voters decide who leads us, not politicians. Nora named it, the threat is real. These folks know they can't win in a fair and square election, so they are pulling out all the stops to cheat, from the gutting of the Voting Rights Act and evisceration of Black and brown congressional districts, to ballot box seizures, to attacks on mail-in voting and voter registration, to installing election deniers in key local and administration positions. They're working tirelessly to rig the rules, to suppress the vote, to manipulate the count. A political party tries to court your vote. An authoritarian regime tries to keep you from voting. That is what we are up against. So I want folks to understand a few things. First, they are not going to stop us from voting. We are going to turn out to vote in record numbers. In fact, overwhelming turnout is an election protection tactic, because when we turn out in historic numbers, we ensure the results are unquestionable and the will of the voters is clear. And second, yes, they've got a plan and they're working the plan, but so do we. That is what this call is about. We are going to have ways for people to engage locally when issues come up in your backyard, nationally in rapid response in critical moments, from getting out the vote early to phone banks to protect against voter purges to ballot curing to showing up to local meetings to fighting disinformation to preparing to mobilize if needed. There are so many ways to tasks to take on and ways to get involved. It is going to take us all. We're going to each have to hold a different part of that collective effort, but together we can do it. Now, before I pass it to Corey, who's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what we are facing, I'm going to leave you with a final thought. We are talking about some very real threats here, and that can feel overwhelming. It can feel scary. Anytime you start to feel that, here is what I need you to understand. Trump and his cronies are not doing this because they are strong. They are doing this because they are weak. They are scared, and they think this is the only way they can hold on to power. They know there are more of us, people who care about our democracy, our rights, and our neighbors, than there are of them. And together, we are going to organize and we're going to prove it. Now, I am so excited to introduce Corey Dukes, who is a friend of Indivisible, an expert in everything that we are going to talk about tonight. One of the folks that we turn to in order to shape our program and ensure that we are asking folks to take on the right tasks at the right moment. Corey Dukes leads Protect Democracy's team, which executes advocacy efforts at both the federal and state levels. He's directed their work anticipating and responding to efforts to overturn past elections in several states. He's also served as a senior policy advisor to Senator McCaskill, state director for Hillary for America, and a senior advisor to Senator Elizabeth Warren. Corey, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you, Indivisibles, for allowing me to take a few minutes of this really important night. I'm really proud to be here representing my colleagues at Protect Democracy. Protect Democracy is a cross-ideological nonprofit dedicated to defeating the authoritarian threat here in America. And one thing that we do well at Protect Democracy is we think about the worst case scenario. Um, we try to see around corners and we try to envision all of the new and horrific ways that the administration might seek to destroy our democracy. More often than not, they live down to our expectations, right? But always thinking about the worst case scenario can be tough. It can be really tiring. And I know that you guys know what I mean. That said, I am just so thankful to do my job and to be in spaces like this because instead of dwelling on the worst case, I get to do something about it. And that's like the other half of my job is doing something about the things that I'm so terrified of. And I'm just so thankful for that agency. And that's what tonight's about. Um, but the doing something about it part, it varies from day to day, from week to week for me. Sometimes the work that we do involves an awesome opportunity or a big risk, and we know immediately that it's a really important thing, like on a Thursday night talking to 5,000 plus friends about this topic. That's a big thing. That's an important thing. I know that. But a lot of the time, most of the time, doing something about it means doing the small things and doing the things that they may not feel earth-shattering by themselves, but they add up to be very impactful. You guys know this. Small things matter. Um, Sometimes small things even make the big things possible, right? Being here tonight is the result of a lot of small things that I've been doing in my job to be ready. So in my role, I know that it's my job to make sure that everything that I do is impactful in this fight against authoritarianism, big or small. Um, the fact is that I am now an expert in election protection and election sabotage in the United States. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would not envision that in my future, but here we are. Since 2019, this topic has been the biggest part of my job. Most days I wake up thinking about how they might try to subvert or sabotage an election. That is 7 damn years and counting. I don't think I'm done with this job. But during that entire time, we've seen patterns emerge, right? We've seen the president and his enablers use basically the same playbook each even numbered year. We refer to it as deceive, disrupt, deny. Let me talk about that real quick. Deceive. First, they try to deceive through supercharged lies and conspiracies coming out of the White House. I know that sounds familiar. Next, they seek to disrupt the election process by deploying federal power against opponents or organizations that they don't like. Ohio Organizing Collaborative. They use the threat of violence to deter voting, and they manipulate election rules to block voters from casting a ballot. finally, the deception and the disruption, that's a pretense, right? They do that for two reasons. One, to create the conditions by which they can deny the results they don't like. So deceive, disrupt, deny. But two, they do it because they want to confuse us, they want to frustrate us, they want to scare us, and they want to demotivate us, and they want to demotivate American voters that they don't like and don't agree with. The big difference between now and last time and previous times is that the president's efforts have the full weight of the executive branch behind them. That can feel bleak, it can feel heavy, and it can feel like it's tough to take on. But we're going to take it on. And I'm confident, like Nora said and like Leah said, that they are going to fail and we are going to succeed. And a huge reason behind that is because just like they've beefed up their efforts, so have we. Um, like I said earlier, it's not my first election sabotage rodeo. I've been doing this since the salt and pepper was mostly pepper. So trust me when I say this, right? I know what I'm talking about when I say that our pro-democracy coalition, the Election Protection Coalition, is vastly bigger, vastly broader, better prepared, and better aligned than it's ever been, right? And you guys are a huge part of that, and you're going to learn more about it today. Okay. So just as I've spent the last 7 years thinking about all the ways the administration can sabotage elections, I've also been thinking about the question that I get asked more than any other. I'm sure Leah gets asked more than any other. Andrew, all the Indivisible staff. That question is, what do I do about it? Right? And there's a variation of that question, which is, what do I do about it now? That's the right question. Those are the right questions. And I wish that there was a simple answer. There's not. I'm old enough to remember Staples. I have an easy button at my desk. There's no easy button, right? There's no pill that magically protects our democracy overnight. But instead, there's a lot of solutions. There's a lot of paths. There's a lot of roles, right? And what I think the Indivisible team has done for us that you're about to see tonight represents the best set of solutions and paths and roles that I've seen. So that's why I'm excited to be here tonight. As you see the plan, you'll see there's going to be a lot of big things to do, right? That are really exciting, like what I'm doing now. And you'll see that there's things that don't feel huge. They feel small, right? But don't be fooled, right? Every action on the list matters. Just like I said earlier, everything that I do to protect our democracy, it's my job to make those things impactful, whether they're big or they're small. And that's our job too, starting here. The very last thing I mentioned before I hand it back to Nora, and I thank you so much for the time. Um, Call it good trouble, call it spirit, call it joy, call it vibes, call it love, call it whatever. You got to bring it in abundance in this moment, starting now. The authoritarian project counts on us being discouraged, being defeated, being demotivated. They fear our joy, right? You know this. They fear our collective action. Um, you know that they want to take that away from us, and we know that they are not going to, right? They're not going to take our love for our communities and for our country. They're not going to take away our power, right? They're going to keep their hands off of our vote. Let's go. Nora, thanks.
Corey, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for being here and for all of the work of Protect Democracy and other folks in the movement. We're so grateful to be in it with you. And I know that there were already some questions in the chat saying, does Indivisible work with other partners? How do we coordinate with? And, Corey's just one representation of sort of like a broad ecosystem that we are part of. And we wanted to just give some credence and some appreciation to. So folks, please give Corey some love in the chat one more time before he takes off. Really appreciate you being here. And to take us into the next part of the call tonight, I'm going to bring up my colleague, Andrew, who's going to walk us through Indivisible's election protection strategy. Andrew, you ready to break it down here?
I am, Nora. Thank you. Hey, folks. I'm Andrew, the National Advocacy Director of the Indivisible. Really grateful to be here with so many folks who are not afraid of Trump's pathetic attempts to undermine our elections. Corey, I think, brought the house down a little bit right there. We just heard from both Leah and Corey that we know that Trump and his cronies are hell-bent on undermining the midterms. They're doing it in back rooms, and they're doing it out in the open, and we know that we can't let them win. And you also heard that we're not in this alone. So not even just the 5,500 people who are with you here on this call, but there are people all across this country who are ready and willing to protect our elections. And there are experts who know the ins and outs of our election system and have plans to defend it. So let's get to what Corey said, right? What are we gonna do together? And now is the part of the call where we do a deep dive into Indivisible strategy, what you can expect to hear from us, and when, so you can kind of make your plans, figure out how you're going to plug in. To do that, and we can move to the next slide here. To start, we got some assistance for some visual learners here. I know we got some visual learners, and we're here for you. So this big oval that says Indivisible Nationwide, that's where we are right now. You are on an Indivisible call, and we are talking about Hands Off Our Vote. This is our national program to ensure all eligible voters get to cast their ballot and that those ballots are counted and the winners are seated. That's for everyone all across the country. Now, you may be thinking, I thought somebody else was running a program called Hands Off Our Vote. Well, it's a catchy name, right? And a bunch of folks are running with it. And I want to say explicitly, that's great. We've all been frustrated in the past that we can't just pick a message that everyone sticks to. Well, congratulations. We finally did it. We picked Hands Off Our Vote. Everyone's running with it. Let's pat ourselves on the back and we can get to work. Inside that oval, you see Election Defense Corps in some battleground states. If you're in one of those battleground states, you are our election protection superheroes. The regime is hyper-focused on sowing doubt in some of the most competitive geographies, so we need to be extra prepared there, right? We all have a key role to play, but we also know where the threats are greatest. So we've got some additional tools and tactics for you, and you'll hear more about that later in this call. And then over here on the side, might be on this side on your screen, you see the No Kings Coalition. So give me an emoji reaction if you have participated in a No Kings rally sometime in the last 2 years. I bet that's a lot of you. It might even be 100% of you, right? Well, don't worry. No Kings has a role to play in this plan as well. No Kings will be mobilizing all the folks that have joined us for the past No Kings days and more to protect our election. And that includes a major effort around the early vote. We want people to vote early and vote together, so the vote is undeniable. You'll be hearing plenty more about the specific plans here from the No Kings crew as we get closer to that early vote window. But tonight we do have a pledge for you that will be shared on this call and in the follow-up to make sure that you get every update as soon as it comes out. That is actually a perfect transition to talking about our 4-part strategy that we're going to be covering here tonight. Next slide. Perfect. So wherever you are, there are 4 things that we're going to do together. This is going to be really simple. You just got to remember 4 things. Strategy 1 is bank the early vote. Now, we all love voting, right? And many of us, we might even have routines on how we do it. Personally, my voting habit has typically been in person on election day, right? I like getting the sticker. I like the energy on that day. But this year, because these threats are higher, we might have to mix up our routines a bit, right? We know that massive turnout and big early numbers make it harder for the authoritarians to deny the results, and there's less opportunity for them to cause trouble. This is pretty straightforward when you think about it, right? If they're claiming there was a bunch of fraud, but everyone saw you and all your neighbors and all your friends vote early, it makes that lie even more pathetic and unbelievable. So practically, what are we asking you to do? We're asking you to check your registration, to get any ID or documents that your state requires, get those in order well in advance, make your plan to vote early, and make a plan to get all your people to come with you and do the same. Again, No Kings has some really fun plans around this upcoming, so get signed up to be a part of that. That's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is combat disinformation and be a pro-voting messenger. The folks pushing the big lie nonsense are relying on the ability to flood the zone with enough slop that even if the slop isn't very persuasive, there's just enough confusion that voters have doubts. That doubt is what Trump and Stephen Miller and all the rest want to use as cover for their sabotage. So when they announce some dramatic action, it's clouded in this confusion and folks don't really know what to believe. But we know the best way to combat this information and build trust in your community and network is to have the best messenger. And fortunately, you know the best messenger because that messenger is you. Your community needs to hear from you specifically. So whether that's on social media, knocking on your neighbor's doors, speaking at a community event, or organizing people to vote early with you, like we've been talking about, we all have to use every opportunity to make voting joyful, visible, and trustworthy. So that's strategy number 2. Strategy 3 is rapid response to election threats. So let's be honest, this one can feel a little bit overwhelming, right? I know that we've all had some days recently where there's like headlines in the morning about a new election threat, and then around lunch, and then also when we're getting off of work, and that can feel overwhelming. But it's important to think about what Trump and his people are doing here, right? They're basically throwing authoritarian spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something sticks. And each time they target an election official or threaten to restrict mail-in voting or issue some totally unenforceable executive order, they're making a bet. And their bet is that if they just keep trying, one of these times we'll give up and they'll get what they want, right? So we need to make sure they lose those bets. And what does that look like? It looks like immediate response to new authoritarian spaghetti to make sure it doesn't stick. That's visibility brigades, phone banks to register people who get illegally purged from the rolls, showing up at an election office to support election officials who are properly counting ballots, right? All of these actions will be crucial tools in our toolbox. Unfortunately, many of these tactics you know and you are familiar with them. And the key thing here is going to be to get folks ready to move fast, to respond immediately every time they throw that new spaghetti at the wall. So don't worry, we will be sending out action alerts as you've come to know and expect from Indivisible around any major development, and a bit more on that later and how you can expect to hear from us. So that's strategy 3. Last one. Again, there's just 4 things to remember here. Strategy 4 is get in mass mobilization formation. I mentioned No Kings earlier, and I know y'all have been part of the massive movement that we have built together. And we didn't just do that because I like hanging out with several million of my best friends on a Saturday, although I do really like doing that. We did that because that's rehearsal, right? That was building the connections and the muscle so that we're ready to do that in response to an acute emergency. When we can't plan it months in advance, when maybe we've got just days or hours, right? If Trump tries to deny the results of the election, if they're trying to seize ballots or refuse to seat the winners, it's on us to make sure that society has to stop and pay attention to that, right? That they don't just move on, that the cloud and confusion that Trump and Stephen Miller want doesn't let them just sneak this by. And this thing that we've all built together is the ability to get millions of our friends together to demand hell no, and we're going to count every vote. So that's it, right? Just 4 easy strategies. We're good to go. You have everything you need. I'm just kidding. You know that here at Indivisible, we like to get into the details and give you really, really practical next steps. And so for that, I'll bring Nora back on to talk about some steps that you can start taking right now. Nora, handing the mic back to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Appreciate that. And I know I just want to give an appreciative acknowledgement to the folks in the chat who have been saying, hey, we want to get to the action. In a call of this size with thousands and thousands of people, including a lot of folks new to Indivisible, signed up and watching. You know, we like to cover some of the big picture, the strategy, the why, the landscape we're in, but I also totally get and respect that eagerness for action. So let's talk about it. One thing I'm going to give kind of a caveat about is that, again, there's maybe about 11 or 12,000 people signed up for this call who will be getting the recording, about 6,000 on right now. Each of you is in a slightly, probably the vast majority are in a slightly different situation with regards to what vote by mail or early vote or election day or polling places or election administration officials, all those things are going to look like. And so we are not going to be able, in the scope of tonight's call, answer a lot of those nitty-gritty pieces or about the exact ways that you might participate in election protection where you are. What we are going to do is be very, very clear about the pathways for communication around those things, as well as the absolute basics, those tiny things that, just like Corey was saying, they might seem small, but they're really, really crucial. And now is the time to start taking care of them. So just with a little bit of expectation setting and a promise to bring a lot more of those specifics in the pathway to come from July 30th onward, let's go ahead and go on to the next slide here. So dropping in the chat right now is our toolkit. You guys know it would not be Indivisible if we didn't have a toolkit for you. So the Hands Up Revolt toolkit has a lot, and I think maybe the most important thing to say about it and saving it is that it's kind of the go-to place for all of those, like it's like the funnel for all of the more specifics, or maybe the shape I want to make is the opposite of a funnel. You go here, and from there, there's a lot more specifics about what you can do action-wise. So it's going to cover things like how to actually be a trusted messenger, what does effective voting messaging look like, graphics, resources, guidance for how you can be a voice for voting in your community, especially in a time when there's frankly so much cynicism and understandable feelings of does my vote even matter? There's a rapid response playbook. The most effective response is local, so we want to give you guidance on how to handle attacks on your vote and where to go for help. Some of that might not be relevant just yet, but we want to put you in a position where you can be. There's information about how to talk to decision makers. This is a really good moment to start asking questions of your election administrators about what they're doing to ensure that the 2026 election is free and democratic. And so we have guidance on that. We can go to the next slide here. We've also got a really interesting section on scenario planning. There will be some elements of this in the upcoming trainings as well. So for folks who may know, our friends at the Freedom Trainers, this is built on their work of scenarios and guidance to imagine what election protection might look like in a concrete sense in your community. Resources on fighting disinformation, resources on looking ahead to the fall and what some of our future activations might look like, resources from around the rest of the movement, other organizations. People were asking about, are we working with other organizations? Absolutely. This is a coordinated effort. There's resources in the toolkit. So just want to say one more time, TLDR, if you're wondering, I want to take action, what do I do? Make sure you have that toolkit link saved because it's going to be a really good place to send you into what's next. But let me be even more specific if we want to go to the next slide here. What can you do right now? I already said it several times. I will say it one more time. Go ahead and grab and share. Grab the toolkit and make sure you've got that handy for yourself. And then the next thing is, let's drop this in the chat to my backend team if you haven't already. I already mentioned we're having 2 more in-depth trainings on election protection in the second half of August. Like I said, we're using your Q&A tonight, as well as other resources from our partners and around the movement to shape what that content is going to look like. So go ahead and get signed up. It's the same link for both like the 101 and the 201. If you can come to only one of them, that's great. If you can come to both, that's great. If you just want to sign up and get the recording and watch it with your Indivisible group, or listen to it at some point in time, that's also great. Go ahead and get signed up for those. Okay, getting more nuts and bolts on those might seem regular, but it actually really matters kind of basics. Now is the time to check your own registration and set up a system to keep checking it regularly, especially if you are in a state where they have been messing with the right to vote. Too many of those to list. But even if you're in a place where you might feel like, hey, I don't think I have too much to worry about, now's the time to check your registration, make sure you're good, and keep checking it regularly. Also want to really encourage folks that now is a good time to make sure that you have a current ID that works for your state's requirements, and find or apply for a certified copy of your birth certificate and your passport if you can. I know it can feel kind of high stakes to start mentioning like documentation, but we just want to be in as secure a position as possible. So far, Trump has been unsuccessful in trying to force through the SAVE Act, but it would obviously be very devastating for millions, especially anyone who has changed their name for marriage or other reasons. So it just doesn't hurt to get those documents in order, make sure you have ID that's right for your state's requirements, and yeah, make sure all those certified copies are in place if they're not at the moment. What else we got here? I want to encourage folks right now to get connected to a local Indivisible group if you are not already. Now here at Indivisible, we really encourage folks like whatever is the best political home for you where you are, that's great. It could be with another organization, it could be with a local group, it could be an ICE rapid response network, whatever the case might be. But if you don't have some kind of political home or you're not connected to a local network, now would be a great time to find and join your local Indivisible group. I think we can drop the link to that in the chat as well. Hands Off Our Vote is going to have ways for people to get involved no matter what you are, but just in those rapid response moments that are going to come up, we are far stronger when we're connected in our communities. So this is just one place that you can go to start that. Next up, now is a great time to kind of start building up contact and volunteer lists. So if they start trying to change the rules on who can vote, or they start closing or moving polling places, doing things designed to prevent people from being able to vote, if they enact voter roll purges days before the election, who are you going to call? Sorry, I don't mean to make a pop culture reference. Who are you going to call? You need to call your friends and family. Okay, what friends or fellow activists might be able to attend a rapid response protest or need to know themselves to check their registration, who might be able to join a voter purge phone bank with you. At a minimum, know who you're calling in your own circles to make sure they have accurate information, and also start thinking about who else would you connect with, like a local Indivisible group or another political home, in order to step into action. Also really want to encourage folks, now is a great time to start learning and reading up on your updated election laws in your state and who enforces them. So just very basically, who runs the elections in your area? I'm saying that right now and I'm like, could I say the answer to that? I think I know. It's the Chicago Board of Elections. But are they trusted? Are they responsible stewards of the vote? Are they MAGA partisans whose main priority is going to be to make sure that their favorite candidates win? Whoever those people are, knowing who you're going to deal with can help anticipate what's coming this fall. If possible, you want to make sure those people are starting to have a plan. So that section of the toolkit that I mentioned earlier, but just to say it right now too, there's going to be guidance on 2 different sets of officials, your local and state election administrators who are responsible for running your election, as well as members of Congress who need to pledge to speak up for our right to vote and make sure that the results are honored. Other things you can be doing right now is finding local volunteer opportunities. So want to give a shout out to an organization called Ground Control. They have a great webpage for helping finding more hyper-local election protection related efforts. The website's wearegroundcontrol.org. You can enter your zip code there. And also, simply by being at this call tonight and being signed up for Hands Off Our Vote through Indivisible, we'll be funneling those kinds of volunteer opportunities as well as rapid response moments to folks. And then last but not least, just keep an eye out for new developments. So in a second, you're going to hear from my colleague Isabel, who's going to talk about our Battleground program, where a lot of times they use the language of like, we're the eyes and ears of what's going on with election protection and election defense. That has already started. It starts again now, every day going forward to the election and after. We all need to be keeping an eye out. It's not necessarily going to be enough to just get your ID, get your registration, and call it good. We think that attacks will be ongoing, so we really got to tune in, get active, and stay engaged. And I know that's why you all are here. So thank you once again for showing up in such high numbers. So, okay, I know that was a long list. Let's shake up the vibe one more time here. I want to bring up my colleague Isabel, who's going to tell us a little bit about some specifics that are available for folks in what we're calling our battleground states, which actually, Isabel, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but what we mean when we say battleground and why that's not all of the states where a lot of really important fights are going on. Folks, give a warm welcome to Isabel from our battleground team.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nora. Hi, everyone. So good to see you all. My name is Isabel, and I work here at Indivisible with our Battlegrounds team. And I'm here to talk about our Election Defense Corps program, which runs through the Battlegrounds department. Now, Nora and Andrew addressed this earlier, but our Battlegrounds program in 2026 encompasses 7 key states. That is Michigan, Ohio, Alaska, Texas, Iowa, North Carolina, and Georgia. Internally at Indivisible, we like to use the acronym MOATing because we think we're building a protective moat around these states ahead of 2026. And these states were chosen for a couple different reasons, whether it's electoral priorities, election defense priorities, group growth priorities. But I will give a disclaimer that these 7 states, that does not encompass all battlegrounds across the country, right? We have so many other states with election defense priorities, with electoral priorities, and I'm so excited to see us protect their elections and flip those seats in 2026. These are just the 7 that we are focusing on through this program, through the criteria we set up ahead of time. So if we get to the next slide, I will jump into what is the Election Defense Corps. So housed within our National Election Defense Program that you just heard about from Andrew exists the Election Defense Corps. The Election Defense Corps is a deep organizing election protection program that, like I said before, we are only offering across our 7 key battleground states. Like I just said, these 7 states were chosen for a variety of different reasons, but primarily because all 7 of them are at heightened risk for threats to their elections from both local and national bad actors. So that's why we need you all, the Indivisibles who live in those states, to give a little extra love and attention to your election systems and your democratic institutions this year. If we jump over to the next slide, I would love to give a brief overview of what the Election Defense Corps is going to look like for our members. So like I said, the EDC is a year-round organizing program that is active before, during, and after the November election, and we launched this program earlier this year. As I'm sure many of you all know, this year, election defense work is not going to end on Election Day. We are going to continue monitoring and putting out critical calls to action every single day until all newly elected officials are sworn into office in January 2027. And then we're going to get back on the horse and we're going to continue doing this work for 2028 and future elections. So, Election Defense Corps members are going to be asked to execute on some pretty critical calls to action on a local, a state, and a national level. Because we know that in these states especially, it's not just going to be threats coming down from the federal government. Your threats might be coming from your county board of elections or your board of supervisors. Maybe it's a bad bill that's coming out of your state legislature. Or maybe Trump just says something absolutely crazy about your state's election system in a speech, which seems to happen more often than not these days. If we jump into the next slide, I want to talk a little bit more about how this is going to look in practice. Constant communication amongst all of our partners and all of our indivisibles is going to be absolutely key in keeping this program successful. Through the Battlegrounds program, we have already hired an in-state organizer in all 7 of these states, and these amazing organizers have gotten plugged into local election protection and voting rights coalitions. That way, we can trust that we're working with all of the key players on the ground that are working locally in these states and have been for years. We understand that these coalitions are very unique from state to state in the way that they organize, and that some of them have been organizing together since the 1960s or maybe even earlier, right? We as Indivisibles are here to complement that work. We want to plug our network into the amazing programs that our partners have been running for years. We're not here to compete or reinvent the wheel. So, as I iterated before, this is going to require really constant communication, and we're going to need you all, our Election Defense Corps members, to act as the eyes and the ears of the electorate and report any funny business happening in your community back to us. A little look at how this is going to work. I'm going to run through our funky little feedback loop here, and it starts with you all, our EDC members. When you see that there's a threat coming down to election defense in your community, maybe in your county, in your city or town, or on a statewide level, we are soon going to be launching a ticket system in all 7 battleground states. More information on this to come. And through that ticket system, you can submit a report to us detailing the threat and where it's coming down from. On the other end of this ticket system is going to be your in-state organizer and a team of voter protection experts. They're going to read through your ticket and they're going to make sure and verify this is a real, legitimate threat that needs to be responded to. And then they're going to take it over to our local and statewide election protection coalition partners. As a coalition, they're all going to discuss this threat together and they're going to come up with the most appropriate response or call to action. Then, if necessary, this is going to come back up to us at Indivisible National and other national election protection organizations, and we'll be here to amplify and support this work however we can, because we're here to start with the ground up. We don't want to come into these states and tell them what to do, because we really respect and admire the work that these partner organizations have been doing for years. So we can jump into the next slide now. Now that we've gotten a glimpse at what the Election Defense Corps is and how it works, let's talk about a few calls to action that you all can do right now if you live in one of these 7 states that are on your screen right now and you want to go and get involved. First and foremost, sign up to join the Election Defense Corps. Many of you on this call maybe already have. If you have, thank you so much. That is fantastic. Please send that link to a friend or send it into your Indivisible group chat. We need you all to be our eyes and our ears, so we're trying to get the most amount of people in the EDC as possible. Next up, the primary way that we're going to be communicating with Election Defense Corps members this year is through email. So it's really critical that our emails always make it to your inbox and not your spam folder. Tomorrow afternoon, you can expect to receive an email from the email address battlegrounds@indivisible.org. I highly recommend that when you get this email, you click on that email address and you save it to your contacts in your Gmail, Outlook, or whatever email platform you prefer. You can then go through the email itself and click on some of the links, and this is going to increase our deliverability to you in the future and make sure that future messages don't end up in spam folders. Now, in return for you making sure we don't end up in your spam, I can promise you that we will not spam you. All communications coming from the Election Defense Corps are purely going to be about important, timely calls to action. You're never going to get a donation request from us, and you're never going to get an email just for the sake of an email, right? We really respect and appreciate you prioritizing these emails in your inbox. We know you get a lot of emails every single day. And then last but certainly not least, we are going to drop a link in the chat to the Battlegrounds Action Toolkit. This toolkit is a living document that our team updates every single week with the top 3 or 4 calls to action in your state, and we organize it state by state. I highly recommend bookmarking this toolkit and then setting a reminder for just 2 minutes every single week to go and look at the actions in your state and see if any are interesting to you or your other Indivisible group members. I'm from a swing state myself. I'm from Arizona, so I understand you're constantly being hit with different opportunities on how to spend your time. I think this toolkit is a really great opportunity to have all of these calls to action in a very relevant, organized document that you can just go back to every week. Now, thank you so much, all. I am so excited to work with you this year on this super important project. And for those of you who do not live in one of these 7 battleground states, thank you so much for hanging in with us over the last few minutes. Before we shift gears, I want to acknowledge that regardless of where you live, your area is going to face unique challenges coming down from the Trump administration this year. You may live in a state that is not included in these 7 states in our Battlegrounds program, but it might still be at an increased risk for threats to your election systems. I want to assure you that regardless of what state you're in, Indivisible is here for you, and we're ready to support you in this fight ahead together. Like Nora said earlier, we all have a role no matter where we live, and we can't defeat these threats unless we do it together as a team. With that, I'm going to kick it back over to Nora to take us back to the big picture and discuss how you can jump into action from any part of the country. Thanks all.
Hey, thank you so much, Isabel. Really appreciate you walking us through that. And as somebody who doesn't live in a battleground state, I also felt very comforted by those closing words. So appreciate it, even though I was frankly anticipating them. Let me bring Andrew on as well with me. So, folks, we've got a fun little segment coming up here. It's a lot of big picture. It's a lot of hypotheticals. Actually, it's still going to be hypothetical going forward, but it's going to be more concrete. So we want to give you a couple like little scenarios, little POVs, little situations to imagine that you can put yourself in the shoes of. Really, the idea is like we're going to be imagining folks who might be on this call tonight in different contexts and what they might do next coming out of this call. Yes, there will be a quiz. No, not exactly. But we are going to ask you to respond in the chat with some ideas. So without further ado, Andrew, would you like to take us through our first little POV? Imagine a caller on tonight's call. Who? And we can
All
go to the
right,
next
I would
slide.
love to, Nora. We're gonna imagine. To start off, I know tonight we've probably got a lot of folks here from our blue states, some deep blue cities, some real Democratic strongholds, right? Let's imagine someone who is on the call tonight from Seattle, Washington, as an example, right? Someone, they pay attention to politics. Maybe they don't even do a ton of local organizing, but they read what Indivisible puts out. They attended their No Kings protest, right? Locally, they're not super concerned about election sabotage happening, in Seattle, in Washington, but they've heard a lot of scary stuff about what might happen in other parts of the country. Some of those places that we just heard about from Isabel, right? For everyone who does the late night doom scrolling, like you might know this feeling. So what can this person be doing right now? We've been talking about the basics of action all night. Want to see in the chat some suggestions based on these strategies. What should this person in Seattle be doing? And I see multiple people saying I should be louder. I will attempt to be louder as well. I'll get closer to my microphone. That is action step number 1. And then action step number 2 is what can this person in Seattle be doing? Okay. I see phone bank to purge voters as a great example. That's awesome. And people were asking, what can I do to support people in battleground states? That's an excellent one. Join their local group. Yes, exactly. You want to make sure that you're plugged in so that you know about any follow-up action, postcards, yep, GOTV, early vote. I see people saying early vote. That's a really important one as well. So again, these are the basics. If you are in this context, we want to make sure you're checking your registration, you're getting all of your documentation handy, you're getting your friends and family all set. And even if that's easy for you, you just get that out of the way, right? Then you don't need to think about it and you free up your brain and your time to engage in these other tactics. You can be doing that remote voter turnout, joining those phone banks, and then definitely get plugged in with some sort of local organizing effort. Obviously, we would welcome you to join a local Indivisible group and start attending their meetings. I think we've got actually a link in the chat for helping you find that local group. And that's going to be how you find some like-minded folks who are also searching for these calls to action. And probably these are the people who are going to alert you, hey, I've got an opportunity to have this impact right away. Speaking of that immediate response, make sure you're watching our emails so that you can respond rapidly to our national calls to action when there is some big new threat that Trump and his goons put out, right? And then by joining this call tonight, don't worry, you are on our alert list, so we will make sure to be in your inbox anytime one of those things does happen. Passing it back to Nora, who's going to walk us through a different visioning exercise. We're going to imagine a different hypothetical person on this call and help them plan what they should do.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Andrew, and thanks, folks, for playing along. If I didn't say it specifically, POV is a shorthand for point of view. I think I saw somebody ask that in the chat, so we can go to the next one here in the next slide. I was just talking recently to a couple friends of mine who live in Little Rock, Arkansas. They're very involved in like local mutual aid organizing, but they're not necessarily connected to any kind of like local or national, frankly, election protection work, but they're getting pretty concerned about the election while also having a little bit of like, does my vote even matter in this red state? They're in a community where, a lot of folks feel pretty highly disillusioned about the value of voting or the impact, especially after some of what the other side has done over the past few years. So yes, I was picturing my friends, maybe also a person on this call. What can folks in this situation do right now? Okay, I saw somebody say share truth, which feels kind of heartfelt and real. Folks are saying still vote early. Massive voter turnout is an election protection strategy. We said that a couple times tonight. Shout out to Beth for that truth. Direct them to this program. Maybe do some door knocking together, cast the vote regardless, check registration, a lot of these different pieces. Yeah, so great. Join a group kind of regardless. It could still be an opportunity for community and more, all of those kinds of pieces. Yeah, so a couple of things I just want to say, before we pull up some of the responses, which of course, just like with Andrews, are going to highlight a little bit of what you all said. I just kind of want to give some specific love to our attendees tonight who are residents of states that have been really devastated by gerrymandering and the destruction of civil rights and voting rights in a lot of states in the South and in other parts of the country too. And just to say too, the other side wants us to feel like we're powerless, especially in the places where they've been successful in their gerrymandering efforts in taking over state governments. They want people to feel like voting doesn't matter or that we should just check out. And of course, the solution to that is not to condescend to people or tell them that their feelings of invalidation are not valid, to try to deny that disillusionment that folks may feel is not perfectly understandable, but to maybe direct some of that energy into local races and to joyful experiences of voting together as a celebration of a right that we still need to insist that we have. So a couple of things, definitely valuable to just learn what those updated laws are, learn who enforces them, and to start contacting local election administrators to make sure they have a plan. Not every person is necessarily going to be, against what we're trying to make happen. There may be allies in unexpected places. Speaking of which, as a lot of folks said in the chat, connecting with a local Indivisible group is a great idea. We've got some incredible groups, specifically in Arkansas, as well as in a lot of our other MAGA-dominated state government states, who are doing incredible, empowering work on the local level, on the state level, and just changing the narrative that so many people think of, what's possible in this country on a day-to-day basis. So I want to give a shout out to that. And just to kind of preview what things might feel like in the fall, it can be a really special opportunity to plan like celebratory early vote events, block parties, power to the polls, joy to the polls. There's so many models for finding joy and possibility in the experience of voting, even in cases, and maybe even especially in cases when so many people have had their rights taken away. Okay, let's go to our final POV scenario. Andrew, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Nora. Last one, and I'm doing my best, folks, to speak up. I might have to get a new mic after this call, but we'll work through it together. So, last scenario. I'm thinking about our people who are in purple or battleground states, right? We mentioned some of those before, and other people are saying my community is a battleground community too. So let's imagine for this purpose, somebody in Ohio. They've been involved in their local Indivisible group. Maybe they even helped organize the last No Kings protest in their town, and they're super worried about some of the worst case scenarios where they live, right? Feds showing up at polls, voter roll purges, the whole thing. Based on what we've covered tonight, what can these folks be doing right now? We're all given some crowdsourced advice to our friends from Ohio. What can they be doing? Becoming a poll worker. That's a great one. Joining your local Indivisible group. Yep. Building coalitions. This is good. The Moting team. They've got the acronym. Yeah. Join the Battlegrounds Election Defense Corps. Get signed up for that. That's a great one too. Okay, so folks, you're catching on that, we've got some tried and true strategies and tactics, and a lot of these apply across states. So for folks who are in the battleground states or other high risk areas, you're going to be doing a lot of things that we already covered in previous slide that are true for everybody. But the goal is for you and your Indivisible group and everyone are going to be doing that as intensely and in as coordinated a way as possible. Like I said earlier, if you're in a high-risk area, you are our election defense superheroes. And if you aren't already, get signed up for that Election Defense Corps. I'm sure we're dropping that link in the chat again. And that Election Defense Corps is synced up with local voting rights networks so that specific threats in your state will get specific local response in real time. Okay. That was it for our sort of three, imagine you are this person scenarios. We've got a couple scenarios that we all might find ourselves in that we're going to walk through. I'm going to pass it back to Nora for the first one.
Yeah, great. So let's go to the next slide. So if you follow Indivisible on social media, a little bit of what we're just giving a quick preview of is something you might see cropping up because it's just a type of information and way of presenting stuff that we're putting forward more these days, which is just imagining election defense scenarios. So to just read a little bit of what's on the slide, attempts to silence voters do begin long before the polls open, voter purges, sudden rule changes, all these different kinds of things. Like we've been saying all night, we are not powerless, and we do believe we can organize to defeat these efforts. So imagining scenarios can help put us in the shoes of what it might be like to need to do that. So we've got a whole bunch of them that we pulled, and we want to say, again, credit to the Freedom Trainers for a lot of this core material. We're just going to walk through them very briefly as an example because we're also almost at the end of tonight, but this is a piece of things we might spend a little bit more time on in future trainings, in addition to tracking a lot of what you all have brought up in Q&A and in chat tonight to inform that. So let's take a look at the first scenario here. Or wait, Andrew, was I going to pass this to you? No, I'm doing this one, right? Sorry. And end of the call, behind the scenes moment. Okay, we've used this example a lot tonight, voter roll purges. I feel like people have been bringing it up in the chat too. It's possible that in many different states, eligible voters could discover that they're no longer registered. So that could be because officials use inaccurate data to remove voters from the rolls. Maybe they challenge their eligibility when they get to the polls. Purges absolutely fall hardest on Black voters, on voters of color, and on infrequent voters. But a purge does not have to become a lost vote. And that's where a lot of our work comes in. So everything we've been saying tonight about checking your registration, using any and all social and relational networks you have to support others in checking their registration, doing so regularly, doing again, using unexpected networks of workplaces, faith spaces, other community networks, mutual aid spaces, to be asking folks to check this, especially if you're in a state that is under high risk. Those are things you can be doing right now. We expect there will be voter purge phone banks that come up through local elections. And by being here on this call tonight and keeping up with our emails, you'll be hearing from us about those opportunities. Andrew, you want to talk to us about, and the next one, which I think folks asked about in Q&A tonight as well already too.
Yeah, happy to. And this was a popular one. So our final scenario, we want to acknowledge one that I know a lot of folks have brought up. And this might really seem like worst case scenario, right? This is stuff like federal agents showing up at the polls, whether it's ICE or DHS or Border Patrol or the National Guard, other intimidating federal forces. I'll say I'm joining y'all tonight from the Twin Cities. I've had my fill of seeing feds this year. I'm sure many of you are the same. So what happens if federal agents attempt to, show up at a polling location or take ballots or election equipment? We got a lot of options here, right? Election officials can call attorneys, examine the scope of any warrant, or document what is taken and challenge unlawful actions immediately. And we have partners who work with, lawyers and legal teams that are close allies in this fight that are absolutely going to be ready to step in and support them to do that. The way that folks like Indivisibles and other community networks can play a role in those moments is to show up to witness, to document, to protest, and to publicize, right? Same thing that we talked about before. We got to make sure that people don't get confused about what is happening and just think, I don't really know, I'm going to let this go. We want to make sure everybody stops, sees that there is some sort of sabotage occurring, is willing to say, hell no, we're going to count every vote. And then, of course, you can be plugged into your local networks so that if someone needs to get a hold of legal support as soon as possible, you know the right person to make that phone call. And of course, being part of Hands Off Our Vote and the Election Defense Corps and being connected to your local Indivisible group will set you up to hear about both these threats and a call to action to response. So that's just two scenarios. I know that we've got some materials that will help walk you through some other ones. But wanted to cover some frequently asked questions on this one tonight. And with that, passing it back to Nora, I think to close us out.
Yeah, thanks. I think I just want to acknowledge a couple things, and I'm gonna leave us up on the slides, you two, Andrew, and then Isabel, if I can actually bring you up as well. I'm looking for where's the spotlight thing? There we go. Just to bring a couple of folks up. Yeah, we can go to the next slide where we were. Just to reiterate, sign up for the trainings in August. Back in team, if you can get that link in the chat one more time. Like I said, we are going to save most of the Q&A for informing those trainings. You can go to the next slide here, Taylor. But Isabel, I just wanted to ask you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Andrew, feel free to chime in on this too. We wanted to give some specific focus to the voting states just because things are specific about what's going on for them. That said, just to reiterate, there is a massive amount of work that Indivisible National, through endorsements, through all kinds of other work, as well as local groups, are doing in many, many states this year, in many, many races. Isabel, I just kind of want to say that because I was seeing it a lot in the chat and just want to reassure, the work is deep, even if it's not being put in this one specific box under this label. Isabel, anything you want to say on the battleground designation, or Andrew, any just texture you want to add to that as we're wrapping up tonight real quick here?
Yeah, just totally agree with you on that, Nora. There were many different criteria that went into choosing these 7 states. I wish we could have chosen more. I'm from a swing state myself, right? But there will be so many opportunities to engage with electoral work, election defense work, group growth work, regardless of what state you live in for the rest of the year. So just keep your eyes out on those emails, on those calls from us, and I promise there will be more opportunities than you'll know what to do with.
Great. More opportunities than you know what to do with is the kind of threatening language I enjoy in this context. And speaking of which, a quick action recap, and then we'll let you all go just a couple minutes after the hour here tonight for what's coming next. Look out for our emails, our texts, our calls to actions. I wanted to say, we will spam you. No, we will not spam you, like Isabel promised, but we will be telling you important things that you can do. And by being on this call tonight and being signed up with Hands Off Our Vote, you're already in the pathway to be getting that. So please be ready to respond. I think we already covered sign up for the Election Defense Corps if you're in one of the voting states. One more time, can we drop that toolkit in the chat? If we have the main webpage that's live, we can drop that as well. The Hands Off Our Vote toolkit is your one-stop shop for everything action related for election protection for the next few months, regardless of what state you live in. Like we said, now's the time to start connecting, putting together your call list, putting together your local networks with your Indivisible group or other people in your life to be ready to activate around rapid response moments or mobilizations. And like we've said many times, people were saying in the chat before we even were, overwhelming turnout is election protection. So please do participate in voter turnout efforts wherever you are. Go to indivisible.org if you need any information about that, or talk to folks in your community who are also already doing it. Folks, we are so grateful for your dedication and everything that you do. We will see you at the trainings in August, if not another time soon. Thank you so, so much for all of your work. Hands off our vote. Thanks, everybody.